Okay. So I want to go over with you Plessy versus
Plessy,
Ple-
Plessy,
Plessy. Plessy. I got to say it with a southern twang. Plessy.
like Bessie.
Oh, thank you. Plessy versus Ferguson. Oh, tell us the history of it.
Okay, Plessy versus Ferguson established the principle that it was okay under American constitutional law if you delivered equal services to the Negro, even if it was separate. Separate but equal was okay. Brown v. Board of Education, circa 1954, as engineered by Thurgood Marshall, with Brown not being his case. That was just the overall name for several cases that were consolidated. He masterminded that, and the point was is that separate could not be equal. The Supreme Court agreed with that and ordered desegregation with, quote, all deliberate speed, unquote. And that phrase there became the excuse to drag feet in the process. So it was interesting, like in a lot of southern states, black scholars wound up getting sent to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, the best universities in the country, because they were not admittable to the various state institutions. So there was one lining to that cloud, and that was good, but it got abolished. Um, it
Um,
was not a good thing when you get told you can go over there, but you cannot come over here. The people that are over here can go over there all they want, but you can't do it the other way around. You get a lot of ill-advised thought today about how great it was when there was segregation. There was nothing great about it. It just compelled necessity of people doing what they needed to do economically with each other, which can still be done. If people can't do it now, there's no reason to return to the horrible thing about segregation. And if you want to see how it really looked when it was in place, next time you go to a large park where they say dogs should be on leash, or in this area, dogs are permitted to run freely. It's like over here, the Negroes could run freely, and over here, they had to be on a leash, or as in other parts of the park, dogs not permitted.
I want to just read a quick background of it. It says in 19 in not 19, sorry, in 1896, or
Plessy.
Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case, the court upheld the constitutionality of the state laws mandating racial segregation in public facilities, provided that separate facilities were equal. The decision, which established the separate but equal doctrine, effectively legalized racial segregation across the United States for decades. Background: Separate Car Act. Homer Plessy. Supreme Court ruling 7-1 decision upheld the Louisiana law, arguing that segregation did not violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Key arguments and rulings: majority opinion. Justice Henry Billings Brown wrote for the majority, argued that the 14th Amendment intended to establish political and civil equality, not social equality. He stated that segregation did not inherently imply the inferiority, thank you so much, of one race over another. Dissenting opinion, Justice John Marshall Harlan, in his dissent, argued that the Constitution should be colorblind and that all citizens should have equal access to civil rights. He believed the ruling would perpetuate racial prejudice and create a caste system, which it did. The impact, Jim Crow laws. The Plessy versus Ferguson decision provided legal justifications for the widespread implementation of Jim Crow laws, which segregated public facilities, housing, education, and other aspects of life across the South. Brown versus Board of Education. Separate but equal doctrine was finally overturned in 1954 by the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case, which declared state sponsored segregation in public schools unconstitutional. And then after that, the Civil Rights Movement, the Brown versus Board of Education decision played a significant role in the Civil Rights Movement, which fought to dismantle segregation and achieve racial equality. Now, question I want to ask you, you have a lot of Black people today that are starting to echo, like you said earlier, oh, we had a better under segregation. And then you have a group of Black people today saying, well, we need to separate. We need to have our own land, our own law enforcement, our own school system, just our own space from everyone. What are your thoughts?
One, human beings have been trying to deal with intercourse with each other for the last 25,000 years, since the middle of the last ice age. People have been trying to set up trade routes so that they could get together with people far away for trade. And now some naive and very foolish people want to block that so they can become separate. Do they think anybody is going to donate to them some valuable real property to use? They can't set up a police force with the attitudes they have, since, remember, everything is anti-Black when somebody starts talking about law and order. You don't have the home situation where people get proper upbringing, where they get dedicated to the proposition of public peace, dignity, order, dependability, accountability, work ethics rather, and stuff like that. So how is this supposed to work? And they get to envisioning they're going to grow fruits and vegetables like they're going to reimpose some kind of Neolithic farming methodology. And that's not going to work. This is the 21st century. They don't have the resources to set up a military to defend what they have. They don't have the scientific backgrounds, the engineering backgrounds, the manufacturing and the industrial backgrounds to set up the industry that is necessary to effectuate an adequate defense. They don't like the Constitution, but they have no clue as to what they would set up as an independent legal/judicial foundation for their particular segregated areas. And they're likely to set up a situation where a lot of them would get put on a wall and given the opportunity to prop it up for a few moments before sliding down the wall. So it's an exercise in complete silliness. And it would not work. It's an excuse for people to stop thinking about how to make what they do have going on work. And it also will not deal with the fact that in a very few years there will be no racial majority in the country anyway. So it's just something that's a pipe dream.
One more thing with this, because the Plessy versus Ferguson, right? You had the Brown versus Board and the Civil Rights Movement. Particularly the Civil Rights Movement was to dismantle segregation and achieve racial equality. However, we did not ask for equity. And I think that's very important.
Do you know what equity means?
What does it mean?
Fairness.
What does equality mean?
Equal.
So did we ask for equal fairness?
It's always inherent. See, one of the propaganda methodologies is to take a standard term that is infrequently used and convert it to something else and then increase its use so people subsume the familiarity that they do have with the term into it's okay. And then the concept that's been severely modified by the changed usage becomes acceptable without having to prove itself. See, this DEI thing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the equity really stands for fairness. Like there's this thing called chancery versus at law. Chancery deals with equity. In other words, if there's a wrong, equity will create a correction. So
Well, let me interject this here because you're right that it means fairness, but it means fairness when it comes to legal,
no, it's just
financial,
it,
financial and social settings. So when I say equity, I'm really zoning in on finance, the
well,
financial.
yeah, but that's fundamental in American law anyway. That's one of the things that they said was wrong with segregation is it did not promote equity. Now they have corrupted it for something else, which simply means that irrespective of your qualification to do something, you should be included just because you look like you do.
Well,
In other words, it's like this: you have a team that with a white quarterback is winning all its games, and somebody says we need a black quarterback, so you just find the first black somebody that you can that can halfway throw a ball, and the team starts losing. Do you want the team to win, or do you just want somebody because of a false concept of equity to have a black painted quarterback? In other words, what it really means in a racial context is equity, fundamental fairness, fairness, which is simply under the American system, you can rise as far as your ability and talent will take you. You should not be held back by anything like your race, color, national origin, religion, age, sex, medical condition. Now,
so
that's different from saying, well, we need somebody who's black without consideration of ability.
no, it's just that if you are other than white, you just need to have the opportunity and not have someone try to stop you because of your race. Now,
Yeah, well, that's fundamentally what it is, but that's not the way they use it. It's like we need a quota of the correct number of black folk in here. Well, how competent are they? You can look at the American
can I
cities.
can I push back a little bit with that because I get your point and I agree with you. However, we have to look at it to where literally when you talk about the federal government, they did force quotas on federal contracts because these companies, they the ones, the company heads, they're the ones with the problem to where it doesn't matter if that black person was qualified, they just was not going to hire them because they were black. They were not going to allow them into the union because they were black. They didn't care about the qualifications. So it wasn't to just give a black person, just plop them in a position. It was really for the white corporate heads or the white people who are in charge to force them of their ignorance and say, look at this black person who is applying qualifications. Don't just dismiss them because of their.
It was an extemporized solution. Let's take the NBA. the NBA, at least on the playing court, is pretty much based on talent. Supposing somebody said, okay, there are not enough white people playing NBA ball, so let's deal with setting up a quota. Every team has to have a certain number of white people on it.
Yeah, that wasn't see, it wasn't, they didn't say, well, we need black people. How it's just
Yeah,
they were literally shutting out black players. But because listen, you wanted to make more money and you wanted to win, and then you started to see players, they were gifted, they were very talented in that sport. So again, to this is what I'm saying, enforcing a quota was basically forcing white people who were in charge to overlook their ignorance. Now, real quick, I want to add this into
it
the
was an extemporized method of achieving a goal. It's not the best way to do it. And although it might have opened the door to kickstart something, jumpstart something, it's not the best way to do it.
well, that was the only way because again, these corporate heads, these entity heads, they were ignorant, they were bigot, and the only thing they could see, they could not get past was skin color. It wasn't a black person that had the problem. It was that white person that was in charge of their private.
Yeah, but see, I went through I was a participant in drafting one of the first affirmative action programs in the whole country. That was back at UCLA, turn of 1966, 1967. And it is what it is. But we went a little further than a lot of places did. And we just said, well, we can make it race neutral because we anticipate that if we don't, there will be a lot of effective pushback if we base it on race, because that will be a form of discrimination based on race. And our point is to make sure there is no such. So we had to draft it.
No. Don't base it on race. Base it on qualifications.
So it's like the quote is two wrongs don't make a right. So the point is if you're trying to get rid of discrimination based on race, then you run afoul of things if you try to do reverse discrimination or you try to base it on discrimination. In other words, you expect there to be an equal number of or an equal percentage of any people who are able to do certain things.
Well, here's the thing. If they did not have the quota, these companies, these corporations, they would just hire everyone that looks like them.
Well, yeah, but that's not how you approach it. In other words, you just say you cannot discriminate against someone because of the following. It became easier under the circumstances before a lot of people started thinking about it to just say black people are 11% of the population, so we expect 11% of the jobs working in industry that don't require heavy education to reflect that 11% in the population. That's a quota. See, and quotas are dangerous. But the way we got Bakke in reverse discrimination is because some black applicants to UC Berkeley Medical School wanted them to apply a quota. So they said, well, we need a certain number of black students in the medical school. And the way they are proposing right now, a standard of you want to maximize the objective fallout to a given community by the people you admit. Well, that tends to be a political test. And since we like to party and have a good time, and we came from an affluent background where we did not have to work to get through college, etc., it's unfair to us, so we just want a quota. They agreed with Baki that he would be the plaintiff. They'd get him in if he didn't mind waiting. He'd get a full ride, and they'd let these Negroes in up front. They'd be in medical school. They couldn't be removed, and it would ruin it for all of the rest of the black people in the country when you wound up years later
All right. Okay.
with what you got.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
So I need to implement this, the wealth gap, when we going back to the equity thing, because I don't want to get far off into this quota. The equity, when it comes to the wealth gap, black people have not increased wealth.
Well, look at Johnson, look at Winfrey, although she got a lot of help from Roger
No.
King. Look at,
I'm talking about the black population in general. I'm not talking about
I know, but I mean, look at what you get.
I'm
They
talking about
want to
collect.
party, they want to sit in front of a TV screen and watch basketball or Atlanta Housewives. They do not tend to bust it when they get into it, but then some do.
So here's my
Look
question.
at,
Now, wait. Here's my question. And so you're saying the reason why black people are falling behind when it comes to wealth is not because of the segregation, um, the lack of equity under finance, but it is due to the fact that black people in general are not focusing on obtaining wealth.
that's right. They want it the easy way, not the work way. It's always what's the hustle that can get me the money easily. But the thing about the typical hustle is you have to work harder to get what you could wind up getting doing it legitimately. It's bad. It's like you want to hire black, but then you get a lot of black employees that won't do the job, and that's not good. A lot of that is spreading to mainstream America. Maybe it's a driving engine on why someone wants the illegals, because they may have a better work ethic than the indigenous people here. Okay, but it's a problem. And one of the bad things about quotas is that it establishes a sense of entitlement, which means we're supposed to get it because we're who or what we are rather than what we can do. And that what we can do goes by the wayside. And it looks like just because we're supposed to be entitled, we should get it without having to perform. But you see, we like to look at these athletic contexts, but I tell people all the time, don't you get it? Do you think these people should be hired, paid these huge salaries for basketball, baseball, football because of their color scheme or what they can actually do? So if you expect that in your favorite pastime, which is going out and wasting a lot of effort on the basketball court when you're not going to be a pro, or spending a lot of time sitting on your couch watching a ball game, if you expect it there, why shouldn't you expect it in those things in life that you can do? And when you get a reverse, is it really because of your race, or is it because of what you failed to do that you were supposed to do?